Hey guys, Mosa here, and today I'm bringing you my Week 13 NFL Power Rankings. Now, without further ado, let's get started. Now, let's kick it off with the Jacksonville Jaguars, who are 2-9 and just took a bye and will be taking on the Houston Texans at home. Now, when it comes to the Jacksonville Jaguars, they are dead last. Honestly, this team is not going anywhere, and they're most likely going to be in the top 3, maybe even top 5, depending on whichever draft pick. I'm not certain that they're going to go any lower in the draft. They're going to be the top 5 team, one of them, whether it be the first overall pick or the 5th overall pick. They are that bad that they will not be a top 10 draft pick. Instead, they will be a top 5, so that would be 5 to first. And honestly, this team could have done a lot better this year if they had done better in the offseason. Honestly, the Jacksonville Jaguars are one of the teams that did not do that well in the offseason, and they could have done a lot better. Honestly, protecting their quarterback was one thing they could have done better, and obviously their defense could have been another thing they could have helped out, but in the end, they didn't do too well, but they could change that in this next offseason. Now, moving on to the Las Vegas Raiders at 2-9. They just took an L from the Broncos, and they will face off against the Chiefs on Friday in Kansas City. Now, when it comes to the Raiders, honestly, they could have done a lot better. Obviously, there are some things that they could have done better, but the one thing they should do after the season is fire Antonio Pierce. He is not a good head coach. He was a good interim head coach, but that's all. If they were going to hire an interim head coach as the head coach, that was Rich Bisaccia. He is the guy they should have hired instead of Antonio Pierce. Honestly, the Raiders made that big mistake and then went with Josh McDaniels. Josh McDaniels. But in the end, when it comes down to it, they need to fire their head coach and they need to draft a quarterback this year because there is no way the Raiders will do anything good in this upcoming 2025 season if they continue with this head coach and the carousel of quarterbacks. Now on to the Carolina Panthers at 3-8. Just took an L from the Chiefs and will take on the Buccaneers on Sunday. Now when it comes to the Carolina Panthers, we obviously know they're not the team that they should have been this year, obviously. But I saw some improvements from Bryce Young. And I'm telling you, you just needed to give him a little break. And you did, and now look at him. He nearly took down Patrick Mahomes. He nearly did. And honestly, it could have been a lot worse for the Carolina Panthers. It was against the Chiefs, but they nearly beat them. They nearly tied with them. One of the two. But in the end, Bryce Young is the future of the Carolina Panthers as long as they can actually develop him. As long as they can do that, they got their quarterback. Now, on to the Chicago Bears at 4-7. They just took an L from the Minnesota Vikings and will take on the Detroit Lions on Thanksgiving Day. Now, when it comes to the Chicago Bears, it's up in the air. I mean, maybe Caleb is the guy, maybe he isn't. In the end, it could go either ways. When it comes to that team overall, I think their head coach is going to be fired at the end of the year. We're going to be seeing a new head coach coming in for Caleb Williams. And hopefully for him, it's actually a guy that is an offensive head coach rather than a defensive head coach. Because usually when you put a defensive head coach, obviously it's because the quarterback and the offensive coordinator are two guys that can handle the offense while the head coach handles the defense. You only put an offensive head coach to help out your rookie or young quarterback that needs the help. And to be honest, Chicago's in that lineup. Now moving on to the New England Patriots, we got the Patriots at 3-9. They just took an L from the Miami Dolphins and will take on the Colts on Sunday. Now when it comes to the Patriots, obviously they are rebuilding. It is just the beginning of what is to come for the New England Patriots. They got Drake May, pretty decent quarterback. Now you build the offense around him and you build a better defense for the Patriots. And that's what is going to come for Gerard Mayo, the current head coach of the New England Patriots. I highly doubt they'll fire him right away. It'll be his job, along with the whoever's the GM, I don't remember his name right now, whoever they are, and obviously Gerard Mayo, they will build this team. And if this team fails, that's when they get fired. But for right now, they got to build this team. They're probably top 10 draft pick this year, so they better make it worth their while. Now, on to the Indianapolis Colts, who just took an L from the Detroit Lions and will take on the New England Patriots in Foxborough on Sunday. Now, when it comes to the Indianapolis Colts, I think that honestly, they need to rebuild what they're doing with Anthony Richardson. He needs help. And honestly, he is their quarterback. I, in fact, believe that. He is a project quarterback. There is no other thing that you can mention about this guy and not think that he's not a project quarterback. In the end, it all depends on how he develops, and the Colts need to work on that this offseason so that Anthony Richardson could be the quarterback that they wanted back when they drafted this guy like a year ago, if I'm not mistaken. This guy needs development, and the Colts need to give it to him this offseason. Now, on to the New York Giants, who are 2-9, just took a massive L from the Buccaneers, and will take on the Cowboys this Thanksgiving. Now, when it comes to the New York Giants, honestly, them releasing Daniel Jones might have been the right move, but also might be a little bit of a wrong move. Now, I'm not saying that they shouldn't get rid of Daniel Jones. That is a given. But it all comes down to the money. It really depends on how much money is against the cap and how much money they got to actually sign some more free agents. But one thing is for sure, the Giants are now going to be drafting a quarterback in this next draft, and they'll probably get either Carson Beck or someone like that, because unless they get the number 1 overall pick, they're not getting Shedeur Sanders. Now, on to the Tennessee Titans at 3-8. They just took a win from the Houston Texans and will take on the Washington Commanders in Washington. Now, when it comes to the Titans, they're like a mixed bag in my opinion. Honestly, 3-8. They're going up. Are they going to be winning the division? No way. But are they going to have a chance of the playoffs? Probably not. In the end, this team is probably going to be middle of the pack, and we're going to be seeing this team as a future contender depending on the situation with their quarterback. I think that they should draft a quarterback or at least sign one in free agency, whichever one can help the team. Because right now, both Mason Rudolph and obviously their their quarterback who they drafted, Will Levis, are definitely not the answers. Now, on to the Dallas Cowboys, who just took down the Commanders, are now 4-7, and will take on the New York Giants on Thanksgiving. Now, when it comes to the Dallas Cowboys, I think and believe that this team will 100% will be a top 15, top 10 draft pick. These guys are definitely out of the playoffs. Even if they have a chance right now, I don't see that happening. I don't see the Cowboys really doing anything. They are going to be out of the playoffs, and they will most likely have a top draft pick to select some defender or some offensive lineman. You never know what they could take. In the end, they need to rebuild and really rebuild. Not what Jerry Jones says is we're all in and all that stuff. They got to actually rebuild the Cowboys if they want to go to the Super Bowl. Now, on to the New York Jets, who were just on a bye and will take on my Seattle Seahawks at home. And honestly, this 3-8 Jets team will 100% fail. And once they are out of the playoff picture completely, that is when Aaron Rodgers will bench himself, just like he always does when it comes to his team missing out on the playoffs, because there's no way he's going to get injured for starters for nothing. So, yeah, he's going to probably do that as well this year, just like he has done it with the Green Bay Packers when he was with them at times. Obviously, most of the time he was in the playoffs, but when he wasn't, he always benched himself and was like, yeah, I'm not playing, I'm not injuring myself, all that kind of BS. In the end, the New York Jets are honestly shambles. They're in shambles, and it's all because of Aaron Rodgers and the control he has over the head coach and the GM. Now on to the Cleveland Browns, 3-8. They just took a win over the Steelers on Thursday night, and they are going to face off against the Broncos in Denver on Monday Night Football. Now, when it comes to the Cleveland Browns, I'm thinking that they are going to be one of those teams that, honestly, they could potentially do something great throughout the year now that they don't have Deshaun Watson, but I don't think a playoff run is in it. They would have to win the remaining games they have left and hope for a wild card spot, because there's no way Cleveland will make it in as a division champion. That is going to be Baltimore or Pittsburgh. In the end, I'm thinking that the Cleveland Browns are in position to make the playoffs, but they most likely will not. And this team will then have to go and build a new one, or at least retool this team for next season, depending on their situation with Deshaun Watson. Now on to the New Orleans Saints at 4-7, coming off a bye week, and are going to be facing off against the LA Rams at home this Sunday. Now when it comes to the New Orleans Saints, I in fact believe that the Saints will indeed be a lot better whenever they hire their new head coach, as I don't believe that they'll keep their interim head coach. So I'm thinking that the real reason they won 2 games at the beginning was they were facing the Cowboys and the Panthers, and then now why they're winning is because they got rid of Dennis Allen. Honestly, I'm thinking that this team's going to be on a high, but they're definitely not a playoff team, especially not an NFC South champion. Now on to the LA Rams at 5-6. They just took an L to the Philadelphia Eagles on Sunday night and will take on the New Orleans Saints in New Orleans this Sunday. Now when it comes to the LA Rams, they're honestly middle of the pack. They're in there. This division has been just a dumpster fire this year. It's just been 5-6 records for both the Rams and the 49ers, and 6-5 records for both the Seahawks and Cardinals. Did we see that happening? In the end, I think that the Seattle Seahawks, the Arizona Cardinals, Los Angeles Rams, and San Francisco 49ers are all just, I don't know what's happening to any of them, but they're uncharacteristically doing things that they should not be doing. For some teams, even though they shouldn't be doing that, they're happy they are. Others, not so much. In the end, I think that the Rams are going to be contenders, but they might not be able to get into the playoffs this year. Now, moving on to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers at 5-6. Just took a win from the New York Giants and will face off against the Carolina Panthers on Sunday in Carolina. Now, when it comes down to it, I in fact believe that the Atlanta Falcons and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are the 2 teams contending for that NFC South Championship. And to be honest, even though they both have different records at the moment, it's still a horse race between the 2 of them. And I believe that Baker Mayfield is going to do something in order to push this team over the hump and honestly push them to the NFC South title. I think somehow that will happen, and somehow, honestly, we might be seeing the Buccaneers back into the playoffs. Now, the Atlanta Falcons are up next with the 6-5 record. They just came off a bye and will take on the Los Angeles Chargers at home on Sunday. Now, when it comes to the Falcons, I honestly believe that these guys, just as much as the Buccaneers, have a chance at the NFC South title. Right now, they are in the lead with 1 game, but things can change. The Falcons are really a team that we all know has been just blowing leads left, right, and center for the past few years. This year could be no different, but we could also see a Falcons team that goes into the playoffs but doesn't get as far as the wild card round, as I believe that either the Bucs or the Falcons will lose in the first round of the playoffs. Now on to the Cincinnati Bengals at 4-7, just got off a bye, and will take on the Steelers at home on Sunday. Now when it comes to the Bengals, I in fact believe that the Bengals are not making the playoffs. There's no way. I don't think that they have the games to win. Honestly, the remaining games, I don't think they're going to win them all, but they're definitely not going to win enough. And that's going to be the crucial part of this scenario for the Cincinnati Bengals. And to be honest, you might be seeing either Pittsburgh or Baltimore win the AFC North. Now, moving on to the Denver Broncos, 7-5, just took a win from the Raiders, and will take on the Browns on Monday Night Football. Now, when it comes to the Broncos, they are on a high. They won't win the division, but they'll definitely be in the playoffs this year. Honestly, Bo Nix is doing pretty well. He could be the offensive rookie of the year. He could be the best quarterback of their class. It's in between him and Jaden Daniels. But to be honest, this team honestly needed a quarterback ever since Peyton Manning retired back in 2015. But now they might actually have their replacement for Peyton Manning after so many years. Now moving on to the Washington Commanders at 7-5, took an L from the Cowboys and will be taking on the Titans at home on Sunday. Now when it comes to the Washington Commanders, I honestly believe that Jaden Daniels could be the number one quarterback of his draft class. Honestly, Bo Nix and Jaden are both there, neck and neck, but in the end, those two are the candidates for Offensive Rookie of the Year and for, honestly, the best quarterback of the 2024 NFL Draft. Honestly, I think I'm leaning more to Daniels, but don't count out Bo Nix. Don't count him out just yet. In the end, these two guys are some future stars that we will love to see in the NFL in the near future. Now, on to the Miami Dolphins at 5-6. They just took a win from the New England Patriots and will now take on the Packers this Thanksgiving in Green Bay. Now, when it comes to the Dolphins, they are on a rise. They are getting back to their winning ways. Now, are they going to make the playoffs? Most likely not. But in the end, it's not out of the realm of possibility. But one thing is for sure, Tua has got to stop putting himself in harm's way. At this point, be Cam Newton and don't fall on the ball at this point, because the dude is gonna get a concussion so bad that he might do something after he retires that none of us are going to like. We are all going to be upset about it because honestly, whether it be ruining your reputation like Antonio Brown or something as tragic as some sort of death due to this CTE disease, honestly, none of us want to see that, and I hope that Tua at least puts his health above right now making a stupid play, especially when, honestly, plays like I think it was against the Rams or something, where he just literally had his head kicked when the player was going out of bounds. Now on to the Arizona Cardinals at 6-5, just took an L from the Seahawks, and will take on the Vikings on Sunday in Minnesota. Now, when it comes to the Arizona Cardinals, honestly, this team is honestly giving me mixed opinions because, to be honest, they are 6-5, second in the division, but via tiebreaker, Seattle is right now on top. In the end, I think that the Arizona Cardinals, in the future, not this year, will be a potential playoff contender. And maybe if they even get it to the playoffs this year as a wild card spot, I think that the Arizona Cardinals would make it as far as the divisional round. That's when their road would stop. That's where they would stop at. No Super Bowl for you. No NFC title game for you either. In the end, this team is, honestly, it's just weird in my opinion. Now moving on to the San Francisco 49ers, 5-6, just took an L from the Packers, and will take on the Bills on Sunday Night Football in Buffalo. Now this team, it's honestly gone down the trash chute because, to be honest, How do you go from being the number one team in the division, the number one team in the conference, the team that went to the Super Bowl, and then end up now being ranked dead last in the division via tiebreaker? This San Francisco 49ers team is completely different from the one that went to the Super Bowl last year. And to be honest, this team might not make the playoffs at all. But to be honest, the 49ers could really just win all their games they had left, go 12-6, and then boom, you got, or I think it's 11-6. Yeah, 11-6 actually. And then immediately get into the playoffs. You never know. In the end, it all really comes down to, do the 49ers have everything they need in order to make a playoff push? And honestly, they do, but they just got to work on how to do it, how to use it. Now, moving on to the Seattle Seahawks, 6-5, just took down the Cardinals and will take on the Jets in New York. Now, when it comes to the Seattle Seahawks, honestly, this team has been up and down with their defense. One day they go and allow the team to score 20 to 30 points, and then the next, all of a sudden, just 2 field goals from the Cardinals. Like, how is this defense like so up and down? Honestly, we gotta make sure we know what our defense is capable of, because at this point, the Seattle Seahawks might actually be a playoff contender, division champion, but it all really depends on how good our defense is. And we can't keep doing this where we don't know if our defense is going to be exploding and just allowing no points at all, or basically getting a shutout by the other team. Now, on to the LA Chargers, who are 7-4 and just took an L on Monday Night Football against the Baltimore Ravens, and will take on the Falcons on Sunday in Atlanta. Now, when it comes to the LA Chargers, I honestly believe that the LA Chargers are a mixed bag. I think that they'll make the playoffs. They are currently, in my power rankings, the 10th team in the power rankings. Honestly, they are a very good team. Justin Herbert's a very good quarterback, but it is up and down with this team right now, being second in the division, right ahead of Denver. But at any moment, I think Denver could actually surpass the Chargers and be the number 2 team. Honestly, I see both teams getting into the playoffs, but right now, it's kind of a mixed bag, to be honest. Now, moving on to the Houston Texans, 7-5, took an L from the Titans and will take on the Jaguars this Sunday in Jacksonville. Now, when it comes to the Houston Texans, honestly, they're on a rise, they're on a low. You never know what could happen. To be honest, this team is a better team than their record says. And honestly, they should be better than their record says. But to be honest, they've been struggling now against weaker teams. And the Jacksonville Jaguars, probably not going to be any different. Maybe you'll see the Jaguars actually beat the Houston Texans. It's highly improbable, but still, it could happen. I mean, the Titans also weren't supposed to beat the Texans, but they did. Now, when it comes to the Houston Texans, I think that 100% this team will most likely be a team to watch out for in the playoffs, because once the season is over, the playoffs start and they turn on the Jets. Now, moving on to the 9-2 Minnesota Vikings, who just took down the Chicago Bears and will take on the Arizona Cardinals at home. Now, when this team comes up against the Cardinals, this team is most likely going to win. And I think so, because I think that the Cardinals are now weakened. They are going to start losing again. They are going to start going down in the rankings. Now, it's always going to be a mixed bag with them. But with the Vikings, they need to start winning. Obviously, they've been winning. But they need to start or continue winning in order to keep up with the Lions. The Lions currently lead that division, but only by 1 game, just 1 game ahead of the Minnesota Vikings. The Vikings hope for a loss for the Lions and a win for them. That way, they could have the same record, and it could go into a tiebreaker depending on how the Vikings and Lions games will end after the season. Now, on to the Pittsburgh Steelers, 8-3, took a loss from the Browns on Thursday night and will take on the Bengals on Sunday in Cincinnati. Now, when it comes to the Steelers, they're going to be a top contender. They are currently leading the AFC North. The Ravens only a game behind. So realistically, I think that this game will be crucial for both teams. I think that the Bengals won't be really a playoff contender, but by both teams, I met them and the Ravens. This is a division where honestly it's being led by a hair and a half, or a half a hair, something like that. This Steelers team needs to win in order to continue with that lead. Otherwise, the Ravens can just sneak up behind them and take the lead at any moment. Now we got the Baltimore Ravens, 8-4, took down the Chargers on Monday Night Football and will take on the Eagles this Sunday at home. Now when it comes to the Baltimore Ravens, I think that Baltimore has what it takes. They're going to be a top contender, but it all really depends on how Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry, especially with a potential read option there, how will this team perform against the rest of their schedule? And that's really where it comes down to, because the Eagles are no team to be like laughing about, because to be honest, even though they've been like more or less a team to be laughed at right now, but still they are the team leading their division and they're proving their worth, and honestly they could be a lot better after this game against the Ravens. But it all really depends on how good the Ravens can also be, because honestly, both teams are really good, but obviously only one will come out on top. Now, kicking off the top 5, we got the Philadelphia Eagles, 9-2, just took a win from the Rams on Sunday Night Football, and will take on the Ravens at Baltimore. Now, when it comes to the Philadelphia Eagles, honestly, just like the Ravens, they are a top contender. 9-2 for the Philadelphia Eagles, obviously, so they're obviously a contender for that number 1 spot as well. But honestly, now obviously I know that the Ravens aren't in the division, let alone the conference of the Eagles. I still think that comparing these two are honestly a good thing, because to be honest, let's be fair, the Eagles are facing off against the Commanders, who they're just failing right now. Obviously, they're on a downturn, but they're sort of the same. Pittsburgh and Baltimore, Washington and Philadelphia, they're similar in similar situations. Obviously, one team having the advantage over the other. But right now, Philly is my top 5 team in my power rankings this week. And coming in at number 4, we got the Green Bay Packers, 8-3, just took a win against the 49ers, and will take on the Dolphins on Thanksgiving Day. Now, when it comes down to it, the Green Bay Packers, they're a team that is ready to rock and roll, get into the playoffs, no doubt in my mind. But they are only 2 games behind the Lions, so this could be an opportunity. But that means the Lions need to start losing. And realistically, there are some games that I can see the Detroit Lions actually losing, but I don't see them losing enough games for the Green Bay Packers to actually make it as a division title, but that doesn't mean they won't make it at all. Now, kicking off the top 3, we got the Buffalo Bills, 9-2, came off a bye, and will take on the 49ers on Sunday Night Football. Now, when it comes to the Bills, this team has been on fire. They are realistically just 1 game behind the Kansas City Chiefs from being the number 1 team in the AFC. And by the way, if they tie the same record as the Kansas City Chiefs, since they were the ones to beat the Chiefs, they are actually winning in a tiebreaker, meaning that the Bills would jump up to number 1 and the Chiefs would go down to number 2 if the Chiefs lose to the Raiders and the 49ers lose to the Bills. That is a very tough season for Kansas City, at least when it comes to being the number 1 team in the division and the conference, or more of the conference than the division, really. But in the end, it really all comes down to what Buffalo can do and what Kansas City will do. Now on to the Kansas City Chiefs at 10-1. They just took down the Panthers in a close game and will take on the Raiders on Friday at home. Now when it comes to Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs, they are pretty good, but are they good enough is the question. And honestly, I think the answer be potentially no, because in the end, it all really comes down to, do the Chiefs have enough? And realistically, the answer could go either ways. But right now, I'm thinking that yes, I do believe the Raiders cannot win against the Kansas City Chiefs, but that doesn't mean it can't happen. Honestly, the Chiefs could lose to the Raiders and maybe even lose the remaining 6 games of their season and end up 10-7 for some reason. How so? I don't know. But in the end, anything could happen. But right now, the Chiefs are the number 2 team in my power ranking. Now, for the number 1 team in the National Football League, in my opinion, we have the Detroit Lions at 10-1, down the Colts, and will take on the Bears on Thanksgiving Day. Now, when it comes to the Detroit Lions, honestly, it could go either ways. This is honestly something that could happen. It could go either ways, but I'm thinking, and I'm spitballing here. Can the Detroit Lions actually make it to the Super Bowl? It's possible. And maybe they'll even dethrone the Kansas City Chiefs. You never know. In the end, they are a tough franchise, and obviously they are only 1 game ahead of their division rival Minnesota Vikings, but still, it is a tough road ahead of both teams, and anything could happen. But for right now, the Detroit Lions are my number 1 team. Now, that was it for this video. Tell me what you guys think in the comments below. Who should be higher and who should be lower in your opinion? Tell me down in the comments below. Now, like this video if you liked it, subscribe, and hit the notification if you want more videos. And I'll see you guys next time.